Hey everyone, Cody from Mac Telecom Networks. A few days ago, Ubiquiti released UniFi Design Center 2.0. I use this tool quite a bit when I'm doing estimates for jobs that we're planning. I also use calculator.ui.com. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the improvements and what they've added to UniFi Design Center 2.0. If you're new here, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. If you'd like to hire me for network consulting, visit www.mactelecomnetworks.com. You can find me on Twitter at MacTelecomN, and if you'd like to support my channel, I do have affiliate links down below. So we're just going to start out with adding a whole new project. The project name will be YouTube. The location is going to be Toronto, Ontario. And then the product preference, we'll do it performance. We'll have it in an office, 2,000 to 5,000 square feet, and about 100 to 300 users. Now we're going to select the solutions that we want inside this UniFi Design Center. We're going to add all of them, and then we're going to create the project. Now this screen looks a little bit different. We could either upload a plan or we could draw our own floor plan. I'm going to upload a plan. Now with our floor plan added, it's forcing us to do the reference length as well as the ceiling height. So for the reference length, down at the bottom that I have these foot markers, and here's the line that we are using. So I'm just going to drag it down here, and then we're going to bring it to the end, and that's going to be 16 feet. Now within our reference length, we're going to put in 16 feet, and I know the height of the ceiling is 9 feet, and we're going to save. That's the first new change within UniFi Design Center 2.0. It's forcing us to do the height and scale, and we want to have that accurate so that our Wi-Fi distribution is showing as planned. Now, right off the bat, this already looks different. On the left-hand side, we could see our floor plans, and we could add a second floor if we wanted, and they do have this drop-down menu where we could look at the floor plans, topology, port view, which we'll take a look at shortly, as well as the equipment list. A couple new features in the middle. We have an undo button, we have a redo, we have our zoom in and zoom out, as well as this center. So if we move the floor plan and then click the center button, it would bring us right back to where we want to be. Now, the next thing we would need to do with this floor plan is to be able to add walls, and they have made it easier to add the walls. If we click and drag and then put it down, the lines feel like they go a bit smoother and they lock a little bit nicer. And we could also adjust these by grabbing the little circles and then pulling them in if we need to. I'm going to draw all the walls for this, and then we'll start adding some devices. Now I have the majority of the walls put up. There are a couple different things that you could do with this. If we needed to edit any of the walls and change them either to glass or an outer wall, we could now do that. So if we click on the wall that we want to adjust, it brings up these different symbols. So we have a trash can, which would delete that wall, and then we could choose our material type if we click on the brick. So now we could either choose an outer wall, an inner wall, or a divider such as glass. If we want to put another pivot point within the wall, we could do that by hitting this button here. And then that will put a pivot point in the middle, and we could drag and adjust that if we need to. And the last thing they allow you to add is putting in a corner wall. So we'll put the corner, we'll do it inner, and then we could move this to scale whichever way we need to. Now that we have our walls put up, we need to start putting in devices, and they've made this list a little bit nicer. In the right-hand corner, we could click on this, and it's our device list. We could also search for devices, and what they've added new is the UDR, the U6 in-wall, the U6 extender, the AI bullet camera, the G4 Doorbell Pro, as well as the G4 Instant Camera, so we could place that into our map if they are devices that we'll be using. So if we were looking at putting the UDR within our network, we could just search for it, type UDR, and then we click on the Dream Router, and then we would be able to place it wherever. And when we do that, we could see the different heat map signatures going around. If we wanted to add the G4 Instant, we could search that up, and we could see that's here, and we could drag and drop it, and this will show us our coverage of our camera angles. So I'm going to add some access points onto here, some cameras, and then we'll take a look at the coverage map. So now I've added some cameras and some access points. If we want to look at the coverage map, we come up to this circle, which is the coverage. So we'll click on that, and then we could specify what we want to look at. We could either hover over the devices, and that will show us. So let's click on hover, and then we'll go to one of the access points. And that will give us our heat map of that access point. If we want to see them all combined, we could go to Wi-Fi. And this is showing us what we would get for 5 gigahertz. If we want to look at the 2.4, we would click on that, and this is what we're getting. Next, we could take a look at the camera coverage, and this is pretty well covered on the outside. You could add cameras on the inside for whichever point you want to cover, and you could turn these completely off. Besides that, we have some visual settings. So if we click on here, we could show a legend, we could show our ports, which we won't be able to see yet because we don't have any cables connected. We could rotate the floor plan. We could change the settings within the floor plan. We could change the settings within the walls, And then we could do the icon size, which I usually bump them up a little bit as they're kind of small to see. Now that we have all of our devices added, we need to add a network rack. So we'll select a rack, and we could either use a 24U communication rack that's existing or a Ubiquiti rack. We'll just use the existing, and we'll place this in the IT closet. Now to fill this rack up with UniFi OS consoles and switches, we need to click on the rack, go to the settings wheel, and we could see by default they add a UDM SE. They also have this auto mode, which if we add a switch, it will just keep laying them out. So I'm going to uncheck that. And then we're going to add a device. Within this add device, it's the same as Wi-Fi. We now have this search function. And what we're going to be adding is two 48 port switches, which will be the Switch Pro 48 PoE. So all we need to do is click on that twice. Now going back to the rack, we could see that it laid it out for us. But what I'm going to do, we'll have the UDM SE at top, we'll have a patch panel, and then we'll have the switch, another patch panel, a switch, and a patch panel. So we could move these devices just by clicking and dragging them down. That's how I like to separate my UniFi consoles as well as my switches, but we need to throw some patch panels in there. So we'll add a device and we'll search up patch panel. And we can see there's a Ubiquiti patch panel here, and we're going to add two of them. In the empty spaces, it auto-populated where the patch panels are going to go, so that's really great. Next thing we need to do is to add cables to the devices going back to our network rack. For the cable portion of this, we could either do it manually or we could do it auto. If we want to do it manually, this is where we would draw the cables, and we could use existing Ethernet cables, UniFi cables, CMP, or CMR. But I'm going to do auto cable because it's much easier. So we'll click on auto cable, and we can see that it put all the cables going in this certain direction, which is how I wouldn't cable it. So what we could do, we could add a cable route. So clicking on cable route, we could now draw a line where we would wire our cables. So if we had some ladder tray maybe going through the ceiling, we could start it from the front, go down this hallway, and then to our server rack. And we could also do it going this way as well. So now with our cable routes in place, we could go back to the auto cable, click on it, and it's showing us how it would route the cables. And this is a very useful tool for estimating, as we could see on the side how long the cable lengths are. To this one U6 Pro access point, it's 79 feet, and you could estimate how many boxes of cable you'll need for this job. And the last thing that we'll touch on about the cabling is we could add data jacks in there. So if we go to our devices and then we go to cabling and connectors, we have the UniFi wall socket 2x RJ45. Most offices are going to have physical data drops in their rooms. So we could add this per room, and then we could click on our auto cable, and that's going to show us how long these cable runs are going to be down at the bottom. Now, another new feature of UniFi Design Center 2.0 is this port view. So if we click where the floor plans is and hit the down arrow, we could see port view. And this is pretty interesting. So we'll click on it, and then it will assign which port we need to connect it to, as well as give it a labeling number, A1, A2, A3, and so on and so forth. If we click on the right-hand side, we could see that we have our other devices. So we have our two switches, which are labeled B and C. If we click on B, it's going to show the auto-populated ports by what we have connected in the Design Center topology. I probably wouldn't label my devices like this, and I don't think there's any way that we could switch the ports. Typically, we don't use the 8 ports within our Dream Machine Pros or our Dream Machine SEs, but I am glad that they added it. It does show us our capacity of ports. Now, the last two things that we'll look at is adding a contributor. So if we click on Manage Contributor, all we need to do is add their email address, and they'll be able to do design work for us. We could also export this to the PDF by going to the right-hand corner, export as PDF, and then we want to select everything that we need. If we don't need to see the Wi-Fi coverage, we could unselect that and then export the PDF. So that's going to be it for this video on UniFi Design Center 2.0. They did do a lot of improvements for this, and I do like the layout a little bit better. If they had a dark mode, that would be really nice. They also added a bunch of other devices like the Doorbell Pro. Let me know in the comments below if you use UniFi Design Center. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you're new here, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. All right, thanks.